Captain Clark didn't kill Clark out of hunger. He killed him out of betrayal. Captain Clark had every chance to kill Clark long before he actually did. He didn't. The reason he finally snap changes who the real threat in this movie actually is. The biggest piece of evidence is timing. Async's own surveillance photographs show Clark and Captain Clark walking together through the back rooms for a stretch side by side with no attack. Captain Clark goes after Bobby. He goes after Kat. He leaves Clark alone again and again, through nights of Clark wandering the complex completely by himself. The kill only happens the moment Captain Clark walks in on Clark and Mary together in the dining room. Not during any of Clark's earlier obsessive nights alone. Not during any of his wandering, the one moment. And when it happens, Captain Clark doesn't even go for Mary first. He picks Clark up specifically and kills him, while Mary gets the chance to run. Of course, the simplest read is that Captain Clark just finally got hungry enough, or that whatever was holding him back wore off on its own. But if the only thing that changed in that room was Clark finally connecting with someone again, the first real human moment he's had since his divorce, then Captain Clark didn't attack a stranger. He attacked the version of Clark that looked happy, the version that seemed ready to choose Mary over the obsession Captain Clark actually is. That's not a monster eating because it's hungry. That's a monster punishing him for trying to leave. The thing everyone calls hunger might just be heartbreak wearing an 8-foot pirate costume. If you like content like this, subscribe. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. The Mary who walks out of Async isn't Mary anymore. The Mary who walks out of the Async facility at the end of this movie isn't Mary, not anymore. The biggest piece of evidence is something the movie already told you, straight from Clark. Inside the back rooms, he sits Mary down and explains it himself. The longer this place holds someone, the more wrong it rebuilds them. That's not random lore dropped in for atmosphere. That's the movie handing you the exact mechanic right before it uses it on her. Mary gets taken. She spends real time trapped in the complex before she gets free. And when she finally sits across from Phil in the Async interview room, she asks him point blank what happens to her now. His answer, word for word, is that it's not his call to make. That's not a man hiding a secret. That's a man who genuinely doesn't know. And watch what the film actually does with her face in that room. She doesn't cry, she doesn't ask about her family, she asks procedural questions, the kind of questions someone asks when they're filling in blanks they should already have. The emotional memory is there. She says the right names, references the right events, but the texture is off. She's performing recollection rather than feeling it. That's exactly what a rebuilt version of someone would do. Get the facts right, miss the feeling underneath them. Phil notices it. You can see it in the way he stops taking notes partway through the interview and just watches her instead. He's not writing because he doesn't know what category to put her in. Of course, the film never shows you an actual swap. No reveal, no twist shot, nothing that obvious. But an organization that's been studying this place since it built MRI machines doesn't dodge a simple question unless something about this case is different from the others. Here's the part nobody says out loud. If Async can't promise Mary an answer, it's because this exact handoff has gone wrong before, somewhere in their own files, and nobody caught it in time. The woman in that interview room, right now, might not even be the first mistake. She might just be the one they finally noticed. The Backrooms doesn't lose the people it takes. It loses the ability to tell you who actually came back. The furniture store was the first backroom Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire wasn't a normal furniture store before any door opened in the basement. It was already a copy of a home with nobody living in it. Think about what a showroom actually is. Fake living rooms, fake dining sets, comfort with no real life behind any of it. That's the exact trick the Backrooms plays on everyone it traps. Clark had already been sleeping there since his divorce. He turned a commercial space into a stand-in for a real house, months before the null zone ever switched on. And before he's even found a real door, he's already rehearsing his own trauma inside a fake room, on purpose. running role-play therapy sessions with Mary, replaying the exact argument that ended his marriage. Not a coincidence, not just a backdrop, not simply the place the story happens to start. There's a shot early in the film where the store is closed and Clark is tidying furniture in a fake living room like a person getting their house ready for a guest who isn't coming. That's not set dressing. That's the movie showing you that Clark had already internalized the logic of the backrooms. Maintain the space, preserve the illusion, keep the rooms looking lived in even when they aren't, before he ever found the doorway. The backrooms didn't teach him that behavior. He walked in already practicing it. The biggest problem with this theory is timing. Clark marks the null zone with blue tape, the way someone marks something they just discovered. That's the giveaway, not the counter-argument. You don't carefully tape off something brand new unless part of you already recognizes what it is. Clark wasn't marking a discovery. He was marking a door he somehow already understood. He didn't find a portal inside a fake room. He found out the fake room had been a portal the whole time. Quick thing before the next one. If you're the kind of viewer who rewatches a horror movie just to catch what you missed the first time, that's exactly what this channel's built for. Go ahead and hit subscribe while you're here. Phil isn't just an async researcher. He's been here since the beginning. Phil didn't just get assigned to study the backrooms. He may be the person who opened it in the first place. The biggest piece of evidence comes straight from Async's own history. Decades before this movie takes place, a scientist named Philip Heyman ran the very first test of the machine that achieved contact with the backrooms to begin with. Not a researcher who joined later, the one who started it. Nobody's ever confirmed whether that scientist and the Phil sitting across from Mary in the interrogation room are the same person. The names lines up, the job lines up. Decades of async records exist, and that specific question has never been answered on screen. If they're the same man, Phil isn't just some employee pulled in to handle Mary's case. He's the one person responsible for tearing the hole into reality that everything else in this story falls through. Of course, Async clearly employs more than one middle-aged scientist, and sharing a name alone proves nothing on its own. But if it does line up, every calm, vague answer Phil gives Mary about not knowing what happens next stops sounding like distance. It starts sounding like someone who's personally watched this program spiral for decades, since the very first test he ran himself. Mary thinks she's talking to a company representative. She might be talking to the man who opened the door. Captain Clark existed before Clark ever found the door. Captain Clark, the giant pirate-costumed still life that ends up killing him, was already loose in the backrooms before Clark ever crossed into it. The biggest piece of evidence is buried right in the cold open. An async researcher named Naren Warren gets chased through the complex by something dragging a peg leg. That same peg leg shows up on Captain Clark later in the film. And this chase happens before Clark even finds the wall in his basement. Captain Clark's whole look comes from Clark's real pirate mascot, the one painted on the sign outside his failing store, Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire. On Async's own surveillance tapes, the creature actually walks alongside Clark for a while without attacking him. Like Clark wasn't even its first target. Bobby and Kat were. Here's what that detail quietly does to the whole movie. If the creature wasn't built for Clark, then the backrooms wasn't reacting to Clark walking in. It was already mid-process. Already using someone's image, someone's failure, someone's iconography, and Clark just happened to be the person that image belonged to. That's a fundamentally different kind of horror, not a place that punishes you for entering, a place that had already decided what to do with you before you arrived. The mascot on that sign wasn't branding. It was a blueprint the backrooms had already pulled and filed. Of course, the movie never tells you exactly when the creature first showed up, but that gap isn't a hole in the theory, it is the theory. If the backrooms built this thing off some earlier version of Clark's failure, long before the 90 minutes we actually watch, then the store was never where Clark discovered the backrooms. The store is where the backrooms had already finished building something. It was just waiting for him to walk in. Some monsters get made by trauma. This one got made first, and waited for the trauma to catch up. The mural was already there before Clark ever picked up a paintbrush. The mural. Mary finds deep in the backrooms, gets credited to Clark by pretty much everyone who's seen this movie. The film never actually shows him painting it. Every detailed breakdown of this movie only says Clark presumably creates the drawings Mary finds on that wall. Nobody, including Async's own people, ever confirms it on screen. And by this point in the story, Captain Clark has already been wandering the backrooms long enough to kill an Async researcher and survive an encounter with one of their decoy traps, weeks before Clark ever shows Mary anything. The imagery in that mural, a pirate-like figure looming over a smaller, distorted one, plays out almost exactly later when Captain Clark kills Clark. Of course, the simplest explanation is the obvious one. An obsessive, unraveling man painted his own nightmare on a wall during one of his nights alone down there. But if Captain Clark already existed before Clark ever crossed over, then presumably Clark might be the wrong assumption everyone jumped to first, Async included. The mural isn't proof Clark predicted his own death. It's proof that whoever's been living in the backrooms the longest already knew exactly how this ends. For him, and probably for whoever goes down there next, which means somewhere out there, there's probably another mural in another building with somebody else's name already written on the wall.